Proudly brought to you by African Monitor and Voice, Africa's Future.
For the last 2 years, the United Nations has been engaged in a global consultative process to develop a new development agenda with a new set of goals to replace the current Millennium Development Goals. A few weeks ago, the first concrete draft of the proposed goals was released by the UN's Open Working Group and presented at the UN General Assembly in New York. So what should be on the global agenda post-2015? And importantly, what lessons have we picked up since 2000? We've invited a panel of specialists to unpack these issues with us today. Joining me in studio is Namhla Mniki Mangaliso. She's Executive Director, African Monitor. Ambassador Nozipho Mkakato Diseko, Deputy Director General, Multilateral Department of International Relations and Cooperation. Opia Mensah Kumar, Resident Representative at Interim at the United Nations Development Program. And joining us from our bureau in Nairobi is George Ndungu. He is a Community and Youth Development Specialist Organization of African Youth. Now, those of us with children will be familiar with this question. Are we there yet? Well, I think it's an important question for us to begin with as we begin to examine what has been happening since 1990, and we're coming close to 2015 when we need to define a new development agenda. And I want to start in Nairobi. I'm beginning with you, George. You are the youngest member of the cast. You were, in fact, 10 years old when the MDGs were originally agreed upon. I want your assessment as far as you see in terms of how much we have progressed or not progressed since the MDGs were started.
Thank you so much. And as you have mentioned, I was fairly young when the MDGs came into place in 2000. And then I learned about the MDGs when I was in my secondary school and then to the university. So I didn't really know what the MDGs are all about. But I think based on the country context in Kenya, we've been able to achieve some of the MDGs. For example, on primary education, Kenya has made a great progress in that, especially on access to free primary education. So that I see as an improvement as a result of the MDGs. And also on maternal health, Kenya has just started implementation of the free maternal health for women. So that's also an improvement that I can say that is a result of the MDGs. Although it has been said that come 2015 next year, most of the countries might not have achieved the MDGs, or some of them are really lagging in bed, especially in Africa. Yeah. Mostly are attributed due to lack of resources, some of it due to lack of political commitment. But I can say that to some extent the MDGs have resulted in more country commitment to ensure that there's education poverty, especially in the rural areas. So I can say as a young person, I've really seen the effect of the MDGs, but I think that they still need a lot to be done. Thank you, George. And I wanted to start with you because the future is about you, isn't it? But let's bring in the elders here in studio. Sure. And let me start with you, Opia. And I want to understand from UN perspective. Obviously, when it started, this was really big in terms of a laudable objective that combined the world in a grand vision that tries to eradicate poverty. How far have we gone down that road? And I know you're going to be marked by a number of people here, and I'm starting with you. So you set it out, and then I'll get my markers in. Yeah, thank you, Godfrey. I'll start with a question you asked the young man. Please. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? I think sounding like him. What we can say is that we made a lot of progress, but a lot more needs to be done. Okay. And progress has been uneven. If you take all of the MDGs and you look at them globally, significant progress has been made in a lot of them. As of now, more than 700–800 million people have been taken out of poverty since 1990. That is significant. It is. In our continent in particular, significant progress has been made in health and the education domains, although of course we haven't all met the MDG targets yet.
Okay.
But that's because we started from a sort of lower level.
Right.
But for almost every country, there has been a lot of progress.
Okay.
There have been variability, of course, in the achievement of results across countries and across also the different MDGs.
How bad was it in Africa?
Even in Africa, it is uneven. The poverty MDG number 1, only a few countries have attained the target, including South Africa here, including Ghana and a few others. But there still has been some progress. People have progressed from humongous figures like 64% to 40%.
Right.
It is not half yet, but it's still something to go along with.
Yeah.
On the health and education, particularly infant mortality, there's been a lot of progress. Maternal mortality appears to be a challenge everywhere. There's been some progress, but the targets have not been met in most places.
And yet that's the most important, the right to life.
The right to life of children, of mothers, of newborns. Nobody deserves to die, wanting to bring life to life.
Yeah. Would I be able to mark you and say, out of the 8 MDGs, how many were we able to make substantial progress that you referred to? How many were we unable to make the progress that we wanted?
I think on the poverty, we can give ourselves sort of average, probably.
How many did we pass? Let's put it that way.
Okay. That's a tough question.
That's a difficult question.
Meeting
in the
exact targets,
we have
not really done very well in Africa.
Right.
Really.
Okay. So that's the overall impression. We have not done as much as we wanted in Africa. Let's get this example of South Africa. If I can come to you, Ambassador. Your progress report now.
Let me just thank the youth first for opening and recalling where we began. And maybe suggest a framework within which we look at the progress that has been accomplished. And that framework would entail looking at where Africa was when the Millennium Development Goals were adopted. It was very dire for Africa.
It was the years of the hopeless continent by the
hopeless continent. Many countries were indebted. There were negative growth rates. And I think to have come to where we are and are exhibiting the statistics that we're talking about in a context where development is a continuum. You don't just lift, take off, and achieve everything all at once. We must acknowledge the progress that has been accomplished, but also be fully conscious of the challenges that lie ahead.
Accepted.
South Africa has done very well on poverty eradication, actually, and nutrition. We are no longer on the hunger map, as it were. In fact, FAO is awarding Ghana and South Africa an award for meeting that Millennium Development Goal.
Okay.
There's been progress on health, and there's been progress in a variety of various areas. The critical thing is, how do we build on what we've done?
Achieved,
Yes, and not lose the progress we've accomplished. Take forward. Education is an ideal. You don't drop it. You build on it. South Africa is already upscaling from access. It's focusing on the quality of education. With respect to access to health, we're looking at the variables that are critical for addressing maternal health. Access to clinics is not enough. And income is important. That's why grants go into the mix of supporting efforts to meet that Millennium Development Goal. And I think for me, in a context where Africa is turning the corner, we need to have clarity as to what remains to be done and what is it that will help us achieve progress.
Would I be able to get you to tell me, out of the 8, how far South Africa has progressed on all of them? And I want to be able to have a sense of, did South Africa manage to do 4 of them, or 5 of them, or 6 of them successfully, or there are still many gaps, and if you can give me an indication where those gaps are. Education, of course, I know, as you said, It is a continuum.
It is a continuum. There will always be gaps. I think policymakers are never satisfied with the progress that has been accomplished. Now, when you measure South Africa, you need to actually understand where South Africa was. 6
years out after democracy.
We had to de-racialize education first and have one unitary education system. I grew up in a situation where there was a multiplicity of education systems underpinned by different ideological outlooks. Bantu education, Christian national education, education for the so-called colors and everything. To be able in 2000 to amalgamate, having started in 1994, amalgamate all of those, deracialize, including all the services that are pertinent to all 8 Millennium Development Goals, I think is quite a feat that has to be acknowledged. In a context where, with human settlements, you are dealing with the history of the Group Areas Act. Remember, Africans couldn't be in Sandton, otherwise would be subject to the Vagrancy Act. And try to provide people with decent housing. I'm informed that South Africa is actually the only country in the world that provides housing free, that builds housing free. The RDP houses, over 5 million have been built. And the difference between us and social democratic countries in Europe is that you rent it. That was stock of housing that belonged to the state. But these units of houses individually belong to people. So a lot has been accomplished with respect to human settlements. The provision of electricity, the provision of potable drinking water.
Sanitation.
Where you have to transcend the Bantustan system that set a pattern for entrenching poverty. So you have to cut across that and ensure that you unite the nation to be able to use your resources cost effectively, giving content to the equality of every citizen.
So you are saying tremendous progress has been made?
It's been accomplished.
Okay, there are still gaps, but
it's
progress
never
has been made. The reason why I wanted you to speak first before I asked Namhla is because I wanted you to set out forth from your perspective where you see the development. Now, she is in the NGO sector, so she obviously works with you, but I think she's more independent.
Yes. We would hope so. And I was so happy to be counted amongst the elders, because you said we were coming to elders here. So thank you very much for that elevation. So, I mean, I completely, agree in part with the sentiments that are being shared by the panel, that we must recognize the progress that has been made. But I think it is overstating it to say that we've done tremendously well.
Break it down if you can, at the Africa level, and if you can at the South Africa level as well.
Absolutely. So we know, for instance, that when they talk about the statistic that we've done well with MDG 1, eradicating or halving poverty, we know that that is accounted primarily by other southern nations, particularly the progress that China and India has made. Africa has not made significant progress in dealing with that particular goal. Now, South Africa is a great example in terms of the fact that we have achieved that one goal, but that is not reflective of how the continent sits. And so we still sit at a place where hundreds of millions are still experiencing poverty on a day-to-day. This is across the continent. This is across the continent. The two goals where there is some, comfortable progress, I would say, are in relation to access to education as well as in relation to access to healthcare, and particularly some of the areas around gender parity. But even those, a lot of what we do as the NGO sector is that we want to go and talk to people on the ground so that we see whether their experiences match up with the statistics that get thrown at us. And one of the things that is the biggest gap with the MDGs is that the experience of poverty at the grassroots level is still quite rife. And so, and one of the things we're hoping for this new agenda is that it's going to start looking at issues of exclusion, economic exclusion, issues of inequality. The paradigm, the development paradigm for the MDGs was such that it understood that development gets given to people. So you do stuff for people. At the local level, when we talk to citizens, they are saying they want to be seen as participants and catalysts for development.
Yeah.
And so they're starting to talk about ownership of productive assets rather than being given free houses.
Yeah.
Not that those things are not important, but because those things do not equip them to independently sustain their own livelihoods and independently achieve decent livelihoods, as it were. And so it's important to say, yes, there are some little areas of progress, but what were the big gaps with the MDGs as a development paradigm? And we know that there were big gaps there, but also even before that, in terms of the indicators for the current MDGs, Africa has not made great progress at all in some of the key areas. That
Can I put you in a box and ask you to mark it out with, give me a percentage?
Percentage of? In
terms of the progress that you have seen over the 8 MDGs.
It's difficult to give a percentage across all of the MDGs. I mean, we're talking about, I mean, we're talking about a number of indicators here. And so you would really need to cram it down to say, and I would need to give you sort of like a perspective from the NGO sector and a perspective from African Monitor and say that I don't even think that we've achieved 50% of the things that we wanted to achieve across the goals. And I think that we need to be a lot more ambitious in terms of what it is we want to achieve with this new development agenda.
Now we need to move, and we've talked about what has been, and we need to talk about the lessons that we took out of the current MDGs and what we carry forward post 2015. Can I start with you, and then I'll go to George, but I want to start with you. And